I am aware that You Can't See Me might have rubbed some of my viewers the wrong way. They might not have liked to see a whole month dedicated to John Cena content. Well, to those viewers, I apologize, and I hope that the month of June is my way of making it up to you by trying to think about what's the most antithetical thing to John Cena I could possibly think of that I could dedicate a whole month of for programming, and I figured, you know, TNA sounds about right. So that's what you saw last week when I did the TNA Monday Night War video. Well, this week I'm going back into the TNA waters for classic pay-per-view reviews. I'm talking about Slammiversary 2005 from June 19th at the Impact Zone in Orlando, Florida. This show was nominated by Russell Pierce and Alex Fireheart over at patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. This is the first Slammiversary in history, though it is the third anniversary spectacular for TNA. It's the dawn of a new era in this company because Dusty Rhodes is out as head booker. Dixie Carter wanted Dusty to join a booking committee of other people in the company, but he was like, "So long, daddy," and he decided to just sit at home and sit out the remainder of his contract. Larry Zbyszko explaining Dusty's absence in the pre-show for this pay-per-view, explaining that he has been relieved of his duties, but that is the end of Dusty Rhodes in TNA. And to top it all off, TNA is currently without a TV deal at the time of this show. Their deal with Fox Sports Net had expired about 2 or 3 weeks before Slammiversary, so there's this huge gap of time where there is no real television presence, no real build to this pay-per-view. They got as much build as they could out of the way before, like, you know, I'd say 2 weeks or so before the pay-per-view. They said that their future shows were going to be on the website for the time being. They wouldn't be on Spike TV until much later in the year, so this is a really scary time when you want to look at the grand scheme of things for TNA, because without TV as this new burgeoning brand, they were in a big amount of trouble with no TV. In fact, one thing I'll put over about this show is that they do a really good job explaining like every detail as to the whys and the hows these folks are all wrestling. Some shows you're left wondering, there's some detail, there's some context I'm missing. You don't miss any of that on this show because, hey, they had no TV for 2 or so weeks. They're going to do everything they can to wisen the fans up as to why these matches are happening. 775 folks packed the Impact Zone, somewhere between 15 to 20,000 pay-per-view buys. Mike Tenay and Don West are on the call here. Very poetic prose to pontificate upon with this opening hype package, all about the theme of yesterday and today. Saying yesterday we were dreamers with a boundless imagination. We were youthful zealots embracing the promise of tomorrow. We were pioneers with bold ambitions. I love when they say bold ambitions. They show Hogan and the guitar shot in Japan and like the one time you saw Randy Savage in TNA. It was very bold of them to have them, I will say. The show begins with a recap of what just happened on the pre-show, where Jeff Jarrett gets into it with a planted Jeff Hardy fan on the front row. Just beats the heck out of that poor kid. We see him get arrested, taken out of the building in handcuffs, therefore is out of our main event of the King of the Mountain match. Now we find out that the previously suspended Raven has been inserted into the match in place of Jarrett, put in there by Larry Zbyszko, who is the man Raven attacked a few weeks ago on television, and I'll get more into the details of that whole storyline later. We open up with a 6-man X Division match featuring Zack Gowen, Delirious, Jerrell Clark, Amazing Red, Elix, Skipper, and Shark Boy, the man who's been credited with naming this particular show. Gowen eats shit on his way down the ramp. It's very surprising for me to see Delirious in early TNA, but then I remember, oh, that's right, this is before the relationship between TNA and Ring of Honor went south. The bell rings. Delirious is already running around like crazy. Only 2 legal men at a time in this matchup. Red gets some time. Clark gets a spot off. Gowen gets a blind tag and misses a top rope leg drop. Clark hits a big springboard moonsault onto Skipper and Shark Boy, followed up by Red hitting his corkscrew flippity-doo called the Infrared onto the 3 of them. Delirious taking a big old Tower of Doom in the ring. Everyone takes turns getting their shit in, having pins broken up. Finally, Shark Boy takes down Delirious with the DSD for the win. I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars out of 5. This was a match with a whole lot of sizzle, not a lot of steak. You know, I got to give them credit for cramming as many high spots as they possibly could into this 7-minute match. You know, you got about a minute and change per wrestler is what that times out to in this thing. But I think they made the most of their time. You know, this is a match that was basically designed for just high spot, high spot, high spot, wake the crowd up, get them riled up for the show. And it certainly accomplished that. We see Abyss backstage. He's getting ready for King of the Mountain by punching a mirror. horror. Elsewhere, Shane Douglas is your roving reporter on this night. He's here interviewing Shocker. Big Mexican star, Shocker claims to be the best luchador in the whole world, but he's interrupted by a very young Alex Shelley. Shelley says he can do all the styles, MMA on Sundays even. He's got a counter for everything and he'll see Shocker out there. Shocker responds to him in Spanish. That's how we close that out. By the way, I do know that Shane Douglas briefly had Michael Shane as his protege doing the new franchise about a year before this, but they really should have gone all the way with this. TNA missed a huge opportunity by having him not also recruit Andy Douglas. You could have Shane and Douglas led by Shane Douglas. It's the new franchise. We go to that match now as Shocker takes on a returning Alex Shelley, and now that Dusty Rhodes is gone as Booker of TNA, that gives Shelley an opportunity to re-sign with the company since he previously left the year before due to the fact he felt he was being underutilized when Dusty was in charge. Meanwhile, Shocker was best known for his work on CMLL. He made his TNA debut a while back at Destination X. He was under a mask and he took off the mask to reveal some guy most of the crowds aren't going to know. But I love how the announcers sold the Shocker's debut because like, oh my God, it's Shocker, who like, he's a masked wrestler in Mexico, so why would we know who the hell he is in America? But the first thing Mike Tenay says is, that's a Shocker from the McDonald's commercial. Like, wow. That's a great accolade, the McDonald's commercial. That gets me excited to watch this new wrestler, whose face, by the way, we don't see in the McDonald's commercial because I can't even find it online. I had to look up what are they talking about, what McDonald's commercial is this, and it's one where it's like a masked wrestler who can't bite into the burger because the mask is too restrictive, so he's gonna take it off, and the people around are like, oh, he's gonna unmask, and he's got another mask on underneath, and they're like, oh, sad. So it's like, why would the wrestler wear two masks if he knew he was going to go out and eat a burger? But be that as it may, like that was his claim to fame that TNA was going to hang their hat on when they brought Shocker into the company. But Shocker has been getting a big push in TNA as of late, challenging for the X Division title, so he's no slouch. Some grabs to start things off. Shelley looking good at first, but Shocker has moves of his own. Shelley stops for a moment to beg off, even kisses Shocker's foot, but aha, 'tis a ruse. Nice maneuvering by Shelley to take over for a moment, dive to the outside, but nobody home. Back in the ring, Shocker goes for the moonsault, but Shelley stops him. Shelley goes up top, goes for a flying nothing, but falls right into Shocker's trap with a drop kick, who follows up with a suicide dive. More back and forth with the two. Shocker kicks out of a twisting fisherman's neckbreaker. He continues to kick out a pinfall attempt, catching Shelley in one of the most ridiculous roll-ups I've ever seen to win the match. I give this one 3.5 stars out of 5. This is a very enjoyable matchup. It featured a lot of moves you don't normally see. You know, it wasn't whiz bang spot kind of like the last match you saw. You had some of that cruiserweight luchador feel to it, but it was a nice hybrid of styles kind of coming together here. I like the chemistry between Shelley and Shocker in this matchup, and I think the crowd definitely was into it. The show recaps the greatest moments in TNA history as voted by the fans. Number 5 is AJ Styles winning the NWA World title for the first time in June of 2003. Backstage, Shane Douglas is with 3 Live Crew. BG James, where's your heart? Conan reiterates the same question, but he's mad about it. Beej promises his friends that they are BFFs, his heart is with them, and says that his actions will prove where his loyalty lies, which, boy, the way he said that made it feel like this dude is absolutely turning on 3 Live Crew in this show. Let's see if I'm right. Up next, Ron the Truth Killings takes on the Outlaw, who we all know is Billy Gunn. By the way, how crazy is it that both of these guys are still actively wrestling 19 years later? Anyway, the Outlaw has entered TNA and has immediately driven a wedge between BG James and the rest of the 3 Live Crew. Everyone here knows that James and the Outlaw were tag team partners in a previous company, so that's the whole thing. Where does James' allegiance lie? I know it's not fair to hold like promo packages and hype videos and stuff to like today's standards, but I don't think I'm being unfair when I say that the promo videos on this show are mostly really bad. Like there's a whole lack of narration, their music cues and the things they choose to play and repeat on loop in these videos feels like almost an editing error. Like this particular video hyping up Killings versus Outlaw is just, it ends with this montage of the 3 Live Crew, kind of a best of montage that doesn't have a clear ending or kind of like definitive, like bam, sound bite or sound cue. It just keeps going until it fades out. Like there had to have been a better way to wrap wrap that package up. Starting out with some fundamentals, we get the headlock, the tackle drop down. Truth is very fast here. They mentioned on commentary that Outlaw had been wrestling for 13 years up to this point. I'm like, that still doesn't seem like a high enough number. A hip toss attempt goes awry. Outlaw recovers with a blatant low blow. Outlaw dazed on the apron. Truth goes for the kick, but Outlaw ducks to the floor and Truth crotches himself. Things go to the outside. The fans hold up a steel chair. Outlaw goes to use it, but the Truth counters. Can they do that? Outlaw does a little dance in the corner before he attempts a flying nothing. Truth puts the feet up. Truth goes for his axe kick, but misses. Outlaw hits the famouser in response. Gunn very visibly calls the next spot to his opponent. Truth counters and rolls up the Outlaw. Very obviously a shoulder up, but the referee counts the 3 regardless. Killings wins, but Outlaw immediately jumps Truth as the referee is completely ineffective. In comes BG James, who takes the steel chair from the Outlaw's hands. We get a standoff and a big old New Age Outlaws chant from the fans. Outlaw turns his back and dares BG to swing. He hesitates, then Konnan runs in and attacks the Outlaw instead. We get a small confrontation with James and Konnan, but it all seems to be good. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5 here. I mean, it's a competent match. Well done enough, but it's just a by the numbers. This is a TV matchup here, and no suspense, no drama in the match itself. The story is all what happens afterward, and there is more to this story later in the show that we'll get to. TNA top moment number 4, Raven debuts in January of 2003. We go backstage where the franchise interviews Team Canada. Bobby Roode, he's Bobby this week by the way, talks trash to Lance Hoyt and tells him to prepare to be, quote, Canadianized. My God, he stole Shane Douglas's thing right in front of him. That's brilliant. Petey Williams tells the Naturals that their losing streak begins tonight. Are there any concerns about the Naturals' new advisor? Scott D'Amore is concerned, all right. He's concerned about what his guys are going to do to Lance Hoyt or the Naturals. Scott compares himself to the great generals like Stalin, Hitler, and Mussolini and says he's not concerned about the Naturals' mystery man. Yeah. Our next matchup is for the NWA World Tag Team Championship as Eric Young and Petey Williams of Team Canada challenge the Naturals. That's Chase Stevens and Andy Douglas. This matchup came about when Team Canada beat America's Most Wanted a few weeks ago on Impact, taking advantage of their slump to earn this title shot at Slammiversary. Early on, Stevens and EY trade some blows. It sends Eric timbering. I love Petey Williams' smoothness in the ring, whether he's giving offense or he's taking it. Young tries to save his partner from natural disaster, but it ends up with him hitting a reverse DDT on Petey. Young with a leapfrog, appearing to tweak his leg, but that ruse does not last long. A1 and Scott D'Amore with the illegal tactics on the outside, allowing Team Canada to take over on Stevens. Even more chicanery on the outside as Stevens just gets the hell beat out of him all match. A1 grabbing Chase's leg, and Andy Douglas has had enough. Stevens finally breaks away, tagging in a fresh Douglas. Today calls it a hot tag, which I think it's the first time I've ever noticed him saying that, and I don't know how to feel about that because I feel hot tag is more kind of an insider term on the level of saying babyface or heel, and you wouldn't necessarily say those, when you're calling a matchup. I felt, hot tag's a little too insider for me. Williams with a sharpshooter. Chase tries to grab him out of it. The powerbomb is countered with a nice DDT. Petey finds himself on Stevens' shoulders, leading to a double team attack. The natural disaster to EY, but the pin is broken up. A1 hits Douglas with a hockey stick. There's chaos on the apron. Suddenly, in comes Jimmy Hart, the spiritual advisor to the Naturals, revealed, and the cameras almost miss him. He tosses the megaphone into the ring. Chase decks Petey with it. The cover and the win. Naturals retain. I give it 3 stars out of 5. This is an example of something where we see it a couple of times in this night where it's a very formulaic match, but it's a formula done very well. I like Chase Stevens selling in this. I think that the workout from Team Canada is really solid here. Jimmy Hart being revealed as the mystery advisor or manager to the Naturals here. I don't know how to feel about it. I've always thought that Jimmy Hart was a better heel manager than he ever was a babyface manager. I mean, this pairing doesn't even last very long. He's gone from the Naturals by September, I think. But be that as it may, it's a good surprise factor at least. It gives the Naturals a big win. It makes them look strong at least. Top TNA moment number 3, Lockdown 2005, the company's first ever all-cage match pay-per-view. Originally pitched as a joke by Dusty Rhodes, Dixie Carter okayed it, and that's how Lockdown was born. Shane Douglas is backstage with Sean Waltman, who has been named the wildcard entrant in the King of the Mountain match. He asks him how did he secure the spot. Waltman very slowly and quietly admits he's a hell of a backstage politician, which does not seem true. Waltman says he's known for hanging out with the clique, hanging with his homies, but tonight he will be the lone wolf and win the NWA World title. Well, coming up next, a very historically significant moment for TNA is the official debut of one of the biggest names in the company's history, Samoa Joe, as he takes on Sonjay Dutt here. They bring up the fact he's the current ROH Pure Champion. He was formerly a 2-year Ring of Honor World Champion, back when the relationship between the two companies were a lot stronger. But I will say, Mike Tenay does a great job right off the bat, just explaining who Samoa Joe is and just telling you why we, the fans, should care. He goes, I've watched the DVDs, I've watched the matches, and I've been watching this guy for years, and I'm so excited to call his matches. That is such a great level of excitement that you want to see in your announce team that helps just hype up the viewers as well. A lot of strikes to start things off by Joe. Sonjay trying to use his quickness, but Joe catching him with that vicious Uranagi out of the corner. Every time Sonjay tries to get something going, Joe just pelts him to the ground in an instant. Sonjay is able to hit Joe with a big dive to the outside. There have been at least 2 opportunities so far for Joe to simply nope Sonjay, and he hasn't yet. Very surprising. Dutt fires back, hits a 450, still not enough. Fighting up on the turnbuckle, Joe catching Dutt with the muscle buster, followed by the rear naked choke. Dutt taps and Joe wins handily. Don West says he finally understands what all the hub is about. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. I was totally expecting just a 1-minute squash job by Joe where he just wiped the floor with Sonjay and that be it. But I think this match went a long way in making Sonjay look like a lot more than a lamb being led to slaughter. Like, he got a lot of good spots in, and Joe took them all and still looked incredible to that combination of like the speed and the agility with his size. I mean, Joe truly was an anomaly at this point in his career, and I think that the way they went about treating his debut was, I think, very well done. This is the start of a very lengthy relationship with Joe and TNA, with a lot of highs and some head-scratching lows as well. But this is the start of a lengthy win streak for Joe. He would not lose in this company until December the following year, once Kurt Angle debuted. We hear from Raven backstage. He says he does not envy his opponents tonight and would rather hug a suicide bomber than be any of them. He says fate has opened her bosom and pulled him in close, whispering sweet nothings about their future together. He says only he is sociopathic enough to leave his opponents' wives widows and their parents childless. He is a human cancer. His opponents are not twisted or amoral enough to kill the host. He says he will finally fulfill his destiny and become the NWA World Champion. What a hell of a promo. Up next, more Team Canada goodness as Bobby Roode takes on Lance Hoyt, who's coming out wearing a custom Frankfurt Galaxy jersey, but why? I was so confused when I saw that because I'm like, did he play for NFL Europe? And I looked it up and no, I know he played football for, his university in Texas, but to my knowledge, he never went pro, never went in the developmental league. He's just a big fan of the Frankfurt Galaxy, I guess. Cool. Roode is not intimidated by Hoyt's size, but Lance is a much stronger shover. D'Amore with a well-timed distraction on the outside allows Roode to knock Hoyt into the barricade. Scott is a constant problem in this matchup, and that's the entire story. Every time Hoyt gets up a full head of steam, D'Amore will get involved. He'll grab the ankle, he'll get on the apron to distract the referee. It's just non-stop. Long story short, D'Amore with another distraction, allowing Roode to clock Hoyt from behind with the lariat, Roode with the cover, and the win. After the bell, Scott says school is still in session for Lance. He sicks Roode on him and the beating continues. D'Amore removes his glasses, his watch, and his jersey. He goes up top, hits a picture-perfect moonsault, only there's nobody home. Hoyt finally gets his hands on Scott after nearly pantsing him, hits the big choke slam and the moonsault. Trainers, EMTs, and referees down. D'Amore is stretchered out as West and Tenay make a bunch of fat jokes on commentary, but dude, the guy just did a moonsault. Fuck you. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. Now, I will say, had the match just like ended with cheat to win, Team Canada leaves, and that's the end of the segment, it would have been a much lower rating. But looking at the entirety of the segment where Hoyt gets his revenge against the loudmouth, obnoxious, evil manager who's been a pain in the ass all night and God knows how long before that, D'Amore finally getting his comeuppance in this big way, fans go home happy. You look at that whole segment and that's a classic formula done really well, like I talked about earlier, and so that brings the overall rating of this segment up a bit. You know, it was a fine match, and Hoyt still looks good in the eyes of the fans despite losing. Top TNA moment number 2, Jeff Hardy's debut in the company in June of 2004. We get another recap package that just recycles a lot of the same footage we saw in an earlier recap package because the stories happen to overlap. Anyway, America's Most Wanted has hit a slump lately, and they're going up against the other 2 members of 3 Live Crew who are having some aforementioned problems of their own. Konnan's off to a hot start, throws his shoe at both Harris and Storm with pinpoint precision. I love seeing Konnan not sell the stomp so he can get the shoe back on. We want Outlaw chants when James is tagged in. BG walks right into a James Storm superkick. Knock knock, who's there? Chris Harris jumps off the second rope, but James cuts him off. BG fights back. We get some accidental collision between the Wildcat and the Cowboy. In comes the Outlaw, who immediately throws hands with K-Dog. BG all by himself and is laid out with a double team attack for AMW to pick up a much needed win. I love Outlaw's shirt here. First of all, it's weird that Billy Gunn is referencing 9 Inch Nails. Like, I never would have pegged him as a 9 Inch Nails fan in 100 years. But also, that whole phrase on the shirt, not only the 9 Inch Nails logo, but also the more words at the bottom, it's a very weird shirt. So now the roadie doesn't trust Konnan. K-Dog puts the fist out, but James leaves the ring. Who's he gonna side with? He turns around and walks out on his own. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. You know, not the best outing for AMW here, but I mean, it served a dual purpose because they get their win back, they get some momentum, and 3 Live Crew continue their descent into the storyline they have going on. So get some more of the overlapping storylines here, and it works, but again, just some of the ways they promote it in the shows themselves, like they have too much similar footage in them that it feels like, you know, the stories are getting almost repetitive. And the number 1 TNA moment in history, was there any doubt? Elix Skipper walks the cage and hits that Hurricane Rana at Turning Point 2004. I mean, like, what else could it have possibly been? I remember vividly like seeing that clip online and just watching it on repeat in my college dorm room thinking this is the most incredible wrestling move I have ever seen, I ever will see. Nothing is going to top the absolute insanity needed to pull off that move there. I mean, like, you could probably say it's one of the top moments of TNA history today, not just like 3 years later, but 20 plus years. It is just that good. Up next, a 3-way dance for the X Division Championship as Christopher Daniels defends against Michael Shane, who's accompanied by Tracy, and Chris Sabin, accompanied by Trinity and what's left of her outfit. At Hard Justice, Tracy betrayed Chris Sabin, Michael Shane betrayed Trinity, and the 2 joined forces. Trinity is now offering to help Sabin out for their mutual quest for revenge, but Sabin makes it clear it's just business. Also, Christopher Daniels is there, and he's the champion. Some fast action to start things off. Nice move early where a spot between Shane and Sabin turns into a move against Daniels. Daniels gets Chris in the Koji clutch, but Shane with a top rope dive onto them to break it up. We have Shane and Sabin working for a while. We just had this shot of Daniels in the foreground for ages. Sabin goes to dive onto him, but Daniels catches him with the knee. Love that. After a bit of misdirection, Sabin is able to kick Daniels and DDT Shane simultaneously. Kind of an alternate version of that opening spot we saw. Sabin ducking a line from Michael Shane, goes right on to dive outside onto the champ. Tracy gets involved. That causes Trinity to come in after her. They get into a fight, and I cannot believe there are no wardrobe malfunctions here. Sabin saves Trinity from a kick-in, goes to hit the cradle shock on Shane, but Daniels holds Trinity hostage, and Sabin's like, cool, and drops his rival to eliminate him anyway. I love the look on Daniels' face when that happens. He's like, cool, and hits Angel's wings on Trinity. Some intense back and forth as we get down to the wire. Somehow Sabin kicks out of the BME, a great springboard DDT by Sabin, but Daniels kicks out. A bit later, Sabin wants to bounce off the top rope, but Daniels crotches him, hits the Angel's wings, and covers to win and retain the belt. I'll give it 4 stars out of 5. You know, Christopher Daniels is definitely the third wheel in this program. This was clearly made to artificially extend the Michael Shea and Chris Sabin feud, and Daniels is just there at times. But be that as it may, when the bell rings, these three work really well together. They have a great chemistry. They feel really at home wrestling each other. And I think that seeing, you know, Tracy and Trinity, the way they got involved just to help build that story as well, really well done. I think it's a great showcase of what the X Division, like the best of the X Division, without having to rely on like a gimmick or a big structure they have to just fall off of. Shane Douglas interviews Monty Brown. What is his mental preparation after seeing his ally, Jeff Jarrett, let out in handcuffs? Brown says what happened to Jarrett has nothing to do with the alpha male. He says he's going up against 4 omega males, 5 if you count Abyss twice. Like what? He runs through all of his opponents and says that they'll all feel the pounce, period. God bless it, what a promo. It is such a shame that when he went to WWE, he became Marcus Corvon, and that whole thing just whiffed, and then he had to leave to take care of family issues, and that was unfortunate. But man, what a missed opportunity. I mean, Monty Brown, you look at this guy and you think, how is he not a star in the biggest company with a presence like that? Main event time with the outdated graphic. It's a King of the Mountain match for the NWA Worlds Heavyweight Championship as AJ Styles defends against Monty Brown, Abyss, Raven, and Sean Waltman too. I love this graphic so much. We do get an updated tale of the tape though, with Raven in place of Jarrett. And oh man, looking at this, I never thought I'd see someone in a match like this be smaller than Waltman, let alone the world champion. AJ beat Jarrett at Hard Justice to regain the world title, thanks in part to guest referee Tito Ortiz. Now, Raven had been with the company at this point for a couple of years. He actually famously debuted like 2 days after his WWE contract expired, so it was a big deal for TNA at that point. His whole angle was he was there to fulfill his destiny of becoming the NWA World Champion. He did get a title match with Jeff Jarrett a year prior to this, but that match was famous for being very bad, ending with Jarrett retaining, leaving a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouths. So his inclusion in this match is kind of a shocker considering all the things that led up to it, because a few weeks ago, Raven was demanding he be put in the match as the wild card entrant, and to prove his point, he actually assaulted Larry Zbyszko, who was a member of the championship committee. Dusty suspends him for it, but Raven says he quits. He almost runs over a cameraman on his way out, in fact. So, like, why is he the replacement, though? That sticks in my craw here, because, like, okay, we're taking out the guy who assaulted a fan, and we're going to replace him with the guy who assaulted personnel members. And oh, by the way, he's already suspended / quit, so we're going to bring him back in here. And, like, you know, that just is weird logic to me. Like, I get why he was put back in there, and I on one level I understand, but I also don't, because why would Larry Zbyszko bring him back after what he did to him? It's weird to me. Jeremy Borash makes the introductions here alongside Larry Zbyszko, who will hold the belt during the match. JB breaking down the rules. Pinfalls count anywhere. If you're pinned, you're put in the penalty box for 2 minutes. If you pin or submit someone, you become eligible to hang the title belt above the ring, which makes you the winner. I love these cool dynamic placements for people on the intros, like Waltman's on the penalty box cage, AJ's on the ladder. Waltman gets things started quickly with a dive onto Raven, Styles with a Hurricane Rana on Abyss. Monty hits Raven with the pounce within seconds to pin him. That makes him the first man eligible to win the belt, and Raven sits in the boo-boo corner for 2 minutes. Raven re-enters the match well before the count's up. Oh well. Brown with a powerbomb on Waltman to put the kid in the box. Styles is getting knocked around like a rag doll all match up here. There's this part where Styles takes a face full of turnbuckle, then the pounce. Raven pins him on the floor, and now we have 2 guys in the penalty box. Raven hooking a trash can into Abyss's face, amazing, and he's on fire here. We see AJ and Waltman start to form an alliance of sorts while they're both in the cage. We get all 6 men back in the ring, but only for a fleeting moment after Abyss pins Monty after a black hole slam. Styles clash on Raven, but Abyss breaks up the cover. Waltman hitting Abyss repeatedly with the chair. He gets him onto a table on the outside and convinces AJ to hit the spiral tap off the top through the table. AJ pins him, and the champ is finally eligible. He's the first to grab the belt. He goes up the ladder, but oh, he drops the belt. But look at good guy Waltman offering to help him. What a great friend. Psych, betrayal, and my goodness, what an X factor from the ladder. Waltman with a pin of his own. Raven brings out a staple gun and gets Sean in the head with it. Waltman later giving him a big old receipt. Don West saying he performed a vasectomy. Waltman doing it to Abyss as well. Styles gets out of the box and chases chases Waltman up the ladder. Abyss tips it over. We get quite a spill for AJ. The camera misses. Abyss has the belt, but Monty Brown comes back, pouncing him off the ladder and into a table. Raven hits Brown with a DDT, grabs the belt, climbs the top of the ladder, hangs the belt up, and becomes the new NWA World Champion. Destiny fulfilled. I give the match 4.5 stars out of 5. Now, I need to apologize for something I said, way back in my worst gimmicks countdown in 2016. I put the King of the Mountain match as an honorable mention. And look, I know this match is probably an exception to the rule. I'm sure that there are other King of the Mountain matches that are silly and not great. And yes, the rules, when you first hear them, are a bit convoluted. But once you see it in action, it actually makes a lot of sense. And I think with this particular matchup, everything clicked. Like, this is an eclectic group of guys. You wonder going into it, how is it all going to work? But it does. Like, there's this great chaos from bell to bell. The timing of people in the penalty boxes just works. It doesn't feel like it takes away from anything. In many cases, I think it adds. It adds to the match. It lets you focus on some more important, salient points. And so I think it just worked. It was a very fun matchup, and it's just really cool. I think a correct person won. Raven winning the belt, I thought was a great moment, for people who were fans of his throughout that time period. People like me who were kids and saw him for the first time, and like maybe it was ECW or WCW or the WWF, and like, wow, this guy is really cool and different and interesting. And what a great example of somebody who like is all about character evolution and psychology and a great promo. Like, this is somebody who I think was so ahead of his time in many ways, just a brilliant mind for wrestling, and that came through in a really dynamic and captivating character. And so fans wanted to see him get his due for a long time. And so to see him get his due here when you knew he wasn't going to get it in WCW or in WWE, it was a really cool moment to see him finally get that moment for the first time since he was an ECW champion. For him to be a world champion here, really cool. An incredible moment after the show wraps up, though. We go right to this TNA promo package, and the first words we hear are Jeff Jarrett saying,
"Some said I couldn't make it."
Well, yeah, Jeff, you definitely didn't make it this time. My grade for TNA Slammiversary 2005 is a B. It's not a perfect show, but overall a very enjoyable pay-per-view. It's a great time capsule of what TNA is all about this time. Like, if you're like me and are kind of like not fully familiar, you've kind of lapsed on like your TNA knowledge at this time, this show is a great way to catch up on it. Like I said, they do a great job just breaking down every plot point, largely because they didn't have TV to explain it for you lately. So that is kind of a silver lining with that. I think it's so cool to see like a lot of the young up-and-comers and working with like the legends, a lot of future legends on this show. Like, there's more than a dozen people you'll see on this show who are still working for wrestling at this like very high national level, whether as a performer or like as a producer or a matchmaker. Like, to this day, they're still involved. So like the stuff you're seeing now in today's wrestling, like a lot of that style got its start and got its biggest influence during this time. TNA, Ring of Honor, this was the beginning of all that. And so it's really cool to go back and see just like how TNA, how much they've changed since then, and just how much wrestling has evolved since then as well, because there's some great stuff on here, and in many respects, a lot of the styles in wrestling just keep getting up and elevated more and more, and you're seeing that evolution take place right before your eyes in this show. But what did you think about Slammiversary? Let me know in the comment section below. Stay tuned as we continue on with this unofficially named TNA month. June A? I don't know. You come up with a better one. But we're going to continue on with our programming this month. Next week, we're looking at Mick Foley's run in the company. And 2 weeks from now, we go back to the year 2005 for the company's biggest show of the year, Bound for Glory. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.